It's quite poor. Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Ian and this channel is all about music and art. Now, what some of you, those guys that watch me regularly won't know is that in a previous life I used to run a hi-fi business called the Audio Clinic. What I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to service this turntable. Now, this turntable is a Revolver Rebel from the early 1990s. And just to give you a little bit of background to Revolver, they were a British turntable company. They started in the early 80s and they were classed in those days as a budget turntable manufacturer. The original Revolver turntable cost about £300 and they did different finishes, like they did a red one and a black one, so all sorts of different finishes, but fundamentally the turntable was just the same. It had a decent quality arm. The turntable is made out of two pieces of MDF wood. Now, it's worth mentioning that we've seen an awful lot of turntables around now which basically just plastic rubbish, really. To play your vinyl you need a decent turntable. Now that doesn't mean to say it has to be an expensive turntable, but it needs to be well constructed. So it needs to be made of wood and metal and as little plastic as possible. Now there are bits of plastic on this, we'll come back to that, but fundamentally it needs to be made of good solid material. That all affects how the turntable will sound. So Revolver is made of two pieces of MDF wood, and the best turntables around, things like the Linsondic LP12, which started in the early 70s, and my particular favourite, the Ariston RD80 and the RD11. Those turntables were what we call fully isolated. This Revolver turntable is not fully isolated, but it has got some isolation. The sort of cheap, nasty turntables that you buy in Tesco's or Aldi and places like that, or even John Lewis. I saw them in John Lewis. These GPO type turntables, they're all made out of plastic, really. And actually, the arm and the cartridge are not that great. But hey ho, sometimes they might sound okay, but long term they're going to damage your records. So jumping forward to the early 1990s is when they launched the Rebel. The Rebel was designed as a real budget turntable. If the original Revolver turntable was about £300, this was, I think, and I bought this new for my shop, it was about £150 to £170 retail, I think, at the time. Now, what happened to this turntable is I used it for quite a few years. My youngest son was getting into vinyl and asked for a turntable. It was about the time that I actually needed a turntable that would run 78s, because I have some very old 78s. Don't listen to it a lot, but so I actually bought a Thorens turntable which had that option. This turntable will only play 45s, which are singles, or 33 1/3 RPM, which are LPs. And you change the speed on the turntable by moving the belt round the spindle. And one of the things we are going to do is we're going to check the speed of this turntable. We're going to do a full service on it, including servicing the bearing, which is something that this turntable for 30 odd years has never had done. So, but we'll get on to that. So let's get on to the actual service part of this job. So, I have done a little bit of work with it. I gave it a check over, and I I checked the speed. The speed is okay. We'll do that again and I'll show you how that happens. The speed is slightly under what it should be, and we have bought a new belt to fit if we wanted to. The first problem that I did have when I checked the arm was that the counterweight at the end was seized. It was solid. Now that's mainly because I used it for a few years, gave it to my youngest son. He used it for a few years and then boxed it up and sent it back to me and said he didn't really have the space for it. So it sat in its box in my garage for at least 5 years. So the first thing I did was let me just take the counterweight off. I serviced, there was a load of gunk on the actual arm, and the way that this actual counterweight works is that there is a metal, you probably won't be able to see it, but there's a metal pin in there which allows it to run on a groove on the arm. So cleaned it all up, works perfectly now. We'll leave that off for a while because it's quite a lot of weight and we're going to be doing other things to it, but we're going to come back to that. So the first thing that we're going to do here is we're going to check the speed of the turntable. Now, what we need for that is, actually what I should say is the sort of things that we need to do this whole job. We need one of these things. Now this is a really old one that I've had literally since the 70s. This is a turntable speed dial. The other thing we're going to need is, and I've got another really old one. This is a arm alignment chart. I'll have a look on the internet and I'll put links down below to where you can buy these sort of things. We also need some oil. That's worth mentioning about oil is that Revolver say that they use a very special oil. Now, so I have bought it from Revolver, who now seem to be based in France. Having said that, you don't need very much, but it definitely needs to be bearing oil. I do have some. I have some. Again, it's quite old, so you may consider it much gone off. But I've got some bearing oil from an old Ariston RD80 turntable, so I could have used that, but actually I've gone for some new. The other thing that we need is we do need some lint-free cloth for when we come to do the bearing, and again for the bearing we need some white spirit. It's worth mentioning as well that the Revolver turntables came with their own type of mat, which was called a star mat, and it's quite a good quality fibre based mat. This is the original one, and it also came with a thing called a pig. Now the pig is a record clamp, and it fits on like so and clamps your record down so if there's a warp in the record it will help to try and smooth it out. Having said that, it's not the best clamp in the world. I do remember back in the day selling a clamp called a red button clamp, which was a much better and a bigger sort of entity really. You'll sometimes find turntables that have got a spindle on and you turn a clamp. In fact, the Ariston RD80 had that type of clamp device. So let's plug this in and we'll see how we get on. Now the way that we check with our turntable speed check, if you look at this, we've got 33 1/3, 45 and 78. Now obviously we're not looking at 78 today, so the outside ring will tell us whether the speed of the turntable is correct. Now the way that this works, we don't need the peg, the way that it works is that we need it under some electric light, and when we switch it on, you might not be able to see it here. I'm going to try and get it in as close as possible, but there we are running at 45 and it's pretty stable. I can see straight lines. that don't seem to be moving. Actually, what I will do, I will put the pig on, only because I'm getting some sort of reflection. It's not making any difference. So I can see that the lines are pretty straight. So it's not moving in any great direction. Let's try it on 33 and see how that goes. Now, considering that this turntable belt is from the 1990s, it's lasted pretty well. Having said that, though, you know, this turntable is going back down to my son down in London, and he's going to use it a lot more. I would expect that the turntable belt will start to deteriorate sooner rather than later. So, looking at 33. There's a slight fluctuation on 33, so not enough that you'd be able to hear it, but it is ever so slightly moving forward. I'm not so sure you can actually see that. That's certainly, for the foreseeable future, an acceptable speed. You won't notice that when we're playing a record. It's worth mentioning that when I bought the belt from, and Revolver as a company have had quite a few owners. When I used to deal with them back in the late 80s and early 90s when I had the audio clinic, they were distributed by a company from Yorkshire, and I did their turntables, I did their speakers, all sorts of things really. Not cheap. I mean, it was actually cheaper to buy it from the manufacturer than to buy it from, say, Amazon or anywhere like that. I think it was I'll tell you exactly how much I paid for it. I have the bill here. I paid £20.95 for the belt, and I did see them on Amazon for £23 and £25. So it's not a cheap belt, and I didn't really want to use a copy because you can't be 100% sure that it's going to fit correctly. It does need to be that belt, really. So now that we've done that, we need to move on. We're going to check the arm, and we're going to check the arm after we've done all of the bearing setup. Now let's take everything off. Remove the belt. That's somewhere safe. So the first thing we have to do is we have to remove the platter, and to remove the platter we need to give there'll be quite a lot of suction, so we need to gently pull it up and allow the air. There we go, it's coming. So it takes, there we go, we've got it. Now the first thing to notice that at some time in the past we've had a leak of oil. As you can see around here, there's quite a lot of oil around where it's leaked. Now what's probably happened there is when it was transported back up to me, it won't have been kept straight, won't have been kept upright, and I will show you how to, if you're going to transport this sort of thing, how to package it properly really. You need to keep the whole turntable level. Now, one of the things we do need to do is we need to have a look right the way down there into the bearing housing. I don't know whether you'll be able to see that. I might get a light. I'm not so sure you can actually see right in there. I'll try and get it in as close as I possibly can. But we can see the bearing at the bottom of the shaft, and it is covered in oil, but only just. Now what we need to do, and let's have a look at the actual spindle, because we should check the spindle while we're at it. So let's just turn that off. Let's have this. The spindle looks fine. There's no gouges or anything like that in it. We think that'll be fine, really. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clear up this oil that's around here. Get rid of that first, and then we'll start to clean all the other bits, and we're going to do that with a bit of lint-free cloth for starters. The reason for using a lint-free cloth is we don't want any bits getting down the spindle. Having said that, they've actually provided us with cotton buds. Now, cotton buds are not lint-free. They will leave the residue, but we'll worry about that in a bit. And I'm going to use another one on just to wipe the spindle, to remove the old oil from the spindle. We do need to get the oil out of the shaft, but we'll deal with that in a minute. So what I need to do now is I need to pour a very small amount, I've got white spirit, down the centre spindle, just covering the bearing, and then with cotton buds clean out any dirt and oil that's down there. Now, it's very difficult for me to actually show that happening, but we'll speed it up so that you can see it. If I can get the camera not so sure how good that will be, but we'll have a look. So I've just covered the bearing there. I'm not so sure. Actually, see, is that better? No. I've just covered the bearing. Also spilt a little bit there. We'll come back to that. And then with cotton buds, I'm going to clean. Looking at how these two ends look, they're pretty clean considering it's 30 years plus. I'll carry on, I'll do a little bit more. I think that's pretty good. I'm quite happy with how that looks. So What I need to do now is I need to leave it. Now the revolver instructions say leave it for an hour. I'm going to leave it for a good couple of hours. Make sure that there's no oil or residue of the white spirits left in there. And then when we come back, we'll put the new oil in and we'll refit the turntable platter. It's just worth mentioning, while we've got the turntable platter, and I said that we want less plastic, this turntable platter is made out of plastic. So it was made to a budget. I think the original revolver had a wooden platter. Can't remember, it was a long time ago. And it's also worth mentioning that the new Revolver Rebel 2, which has come out, has the ridiculous price of £995. Like I say, don't know quite what the difference is, but I'm assuming for your £1,000 you're not going to get a plastic platter. So thanks very much for watching. We'll leave it there, and there'll be a part 2 of this particular series of videos because I don't want these to be too long. So if you've got any comments or any questions, pop them in the comments down below, and I'll see you in part 2. Thanks very much. Bye bye.